Yes, yes. What's going on with y'all? Jay Myrax, ultrawest.com. And we are back. Today, my good people, we're gonna talk about it. What's a rap? Well, of course, the end of the year is a rap. The end of the year. Um, but what does that mean? Around this time, what happens is at the end of the year, all of our favorite DSPs give us a beautiful piece of content to post on our social media platforms, thanking us for all of the music that we have provided to their platform to basically be rented for as low as $5.99 a month, and giving their customer base access to all the music that has come out in the past, however many decades now, because they have music spanning from all the way back to the beginning. So every year we get this piece of content and we post it and we celebrate and we say, here's my Spotify wrapped up, or here's my whatever wrapped. And it's very interesting to me because we do this while still knowing and understanding that the pay scale and the whole business model connected to streaming especially is flawed. It's critically flawed. It's flawed to the degree where it makes it very difficult for a music producer to make money off of music. Definitely makes it very difficult for an aspiring artist or independent artist to make money off of music. I know on the music producer side, streaming is what has really propelled the whole beat leasing concept, because realistically, artists don't have any real incentive today to pay for an exclusive beat or anything like that, when it's just going to go on streaming and they're going to make barely any money. And at the end of the year, all they're going to be able to do is post this analytics. They're going to be able to post these analytics. It's a wrap, right? So, why do we continue to do this? Why are we so programmed into continuing this cycle of promoting the things that continue to suppress many aspects of the economy for music production and the economy for just music in general? Why do we do it? I don't get why we are so adamant about this, why we're so adamant about fitting in to what everybody else is doing at this time of year. Because realistically, I think it becomes a bit more peer pressure in a way. Like, you see some of your buddies do it, so then you're like, oh, well, since they're posting it, like, I need to make it look like I'm doing music too, so let me post it as well. So then you post it and then people like the post. Meanwhile, the only entity that's benefiting from it are the DSPs in the end. You're promoting their platform. When you post Spotify, Wrapped, or any type of year-end analytics like that, you're promoting their platform. I don't see why we are so conditioned to doing this, besides the fact that, yes, likes do have some type of currency at this point. Yes, a like can be something that allows more of our content to be seen. Likes and engagement can increase our visibility. So that might be one reason that we post it. But the reality is, even with more visibility, if we're not actually able to capitalize on it ourselves, then we're only benefiting the DSPs by doing this. I think that we need to be a bit more strategic around how we deal with DSPs in the first place. I think for the independent artists especially, it may be a mistake to put all of your music on streaming. And the reason I say this is because if you put all of your music on streaming, you put your whole album, you come out with a project, you've worked on it, you spent money on it, you've put a whole bunch of effort into it to make it sound amazing. You've listened to the things that we talk about on this channel, and you made sure that you have intentionality and that the sounds and the sonics of your project are on point and everything is hitting on all cylinders. And then you put the whole project on DSPs, on streaming, so that people can just access it for pennies on the dollar. It doesn't make sense for you, like just the economy, like the return on investment doesn't make sense. You put a lot of money into the production, into recording, and then you give it to someone else to basically sell it for pennies. Now, I believe that you can leverage a DSP or streaming in a way that's beneficial to you. But it starts with at least controlling a bit more of your own content in the end. If you just give it to streaming, at best you're hoping that it gets put in a playlist that is popping, and then you might be able to make a little bit of money off of it. But I think if we're being strategic, you could use streaming to put, say, your first or maybe your singles, right? Maybe you say, okay, these 2 songs off of a 12 song project are going to be singles. These are the ones that have like the most like universal dance club, pop appeal or whatever. You put those into streaming. You let people hear those. You let people get hooked by having access to those things, like your singles. So you can kind of treat Spotify or whatever like the radio. And then the rest of your music, you probably should consider having more control and being able to go direct to consumer with the full project. Because otherwise, if everything is available for free, then basically nobody's ever gonna like break bread with you or create any opportunities for you to make a return on investment, because people already paid, for their Spotify. They already paid for whatever their streaming service is. They're not necessarily looking to pay extra money for something that's already on streaming that they can just listen to on demand. So I think we got to change our relationship with these platforms as well. I mean, everything cannot just be full access. Everything cannot just be like, hey, I put all my life work on this thing and you can just watch it for free and I'll take whatever revenue split the platform gives me, because what else can I do? Well, what you can do is actually take control over your situation and make some decisions on how you want to engage with your audience in the end as a musician. You don't have to do the same thing that everybody else is doing just because everybody says, yeah, now available on all streaming platforms. Like, it sounds cool until you really look at the economy behind that. When you look at the actual business behind that, it only sounds cool. It's actually not cool for you to give away all your content just on streaming and take pennies on the dollar for it. I don't agree with that. I don't believe that that's the way forward for us. And I think it's destroying the economy for the artist and the producer as well. The artist, the person that's performing, that's like gonna do shows, that's gonna be able to create their name and their entity from the music. This artist that puts everything on streaming is not going to have high motivation to pay producers for tracks when they're not making money off of it. But I think we have to have conversations with the artists in our network as well. We have to be able to have the conversation to say, hey, let's have a strategy. I want to work with you, but if it's just going to go on streaming, it benefits nobody. If you're going to do this, this is what you should do. Let's take this song and that song, and those are our singles. Let's put that on streaming. Let's try to get that into playlists. Let's try to move those songs and give people access to kind of get a feel for what we're doing on this project. But the rest of this stuff, we have to sell. We have to be able to control. We have to have some type of direct to consumer model so that the customers come to us and we can control the pricing. And you'd be surprised at, when you take control over your situation, you'd be surprised at how generous and how supportive your true fans can be. I think too many of us are just accustomed to doing what the masses say to do, because I've heard it over the years. Like, I've heard people say, oh yeah, you talking about physical, like CDs, like who has a CD player still and whatever. Like, listen, people will buy what they want at the end of the day. Anything that they find valuable or feel like they need to have, they will buy. Like, to talk about the CD players, like, oh, CDs are dead or whatever. Like, okay, cool. My PlayStation 5 still has a CD drive and they still sell physical discs for their games as well. They haven't completely eliminated it. Yes, it's an option, but the one I have has a drive. So my thing is, I'm not going to sit up here and act like having an option to buy a physical CD should not be in my repertoire as a musician, when the gaming industry, which is arguably one of the biggest industries in tech right now, is still able to sell some CDs or some physical discs to their consumer. We're not gonna act like physical sales are the dominant method or medium, because it's not. Obviously, it's very convenient for people to get some type of Game Pass or some other type of streaming library access membership and just get access to whatever they want to and just download things ad hoc. That's not going anywhere. So let me be very clear. I'm not saying that that's going to go anywhere, but you do have people that appreciate having physical goods. You do have people that appreciate having access to these goods in a way where they can look at the disc and they can look at the cover and they have access to these things, and it makes them feel good. You gotta consider, like, we live in an era now where people have rooms dedicated to, like, especially if you're older, right? If you're an older person, people have rooms dedicated to the things that they are in love with, the things that they care about. Like, that's why you see, if you've ever ventured off into like retro game YouTube, like, these people have game rooms with all the old consoles and walls of their disc and cartridges and everything else. Similarly, people that still are very much into their audio will have rooms dedicated to their audio just to listen to. So it's my listening room, and I have all my records and my CDs and all my tapes and all that stuff. There are people that appreciate that. So for us to act like it's completely dead to sell physical is wrong. It's the wrong outlook, and I think it's limiting our ability to take control of our situation. I think a lot of the limitation that we see with direct to consumer is just based on our fears in the end, because it looks different. We can't have the same language as everyone else when we talk about our music. We have to use different language. Like, yes, we pressed up this many units. It's a limited edition. It's rare. We have to start talking differently about our music when we start doing direct to consumer, especially if you're talking about physical. Even if you just go digital, you're still going to be talking about your music differently. Like, hey, my album is available at mywebsite.com, right? That's the language that you start to use when you start to take control. You start talking about it from the perspective of, I need to direct traffic to somewhere that I control, versus just saying, just go to the same platform where everybody else's stuff is and try to find my stuff, by the way, and try not to get distracted from my music by all the other stuff and all the ads and everything else that's going on that platform. Try not to get distracted. Please listen to my music and give it a fair chance. I think a lot of us are scared to take the control and say, no, you come here, you buy it from me. This is what the price is. We have to learn that, number one, nobody cares about us except for us in the end. The fact is, with the whole streaming concept, a lot of us, we already got kind of sold out by those that have power and those that have control over things like music tech and those that big tech in general. Like we already got sold out to big tech as musicians. So even our favorite major artist or producer, whatever, is not willing to tell you, hey, leave that platform and go elsewhere. They're not going to tell you that at all, because a lot of them are already in bed with these companies. They already are part owners or like deeply invested. They're not going to tell you to move off of it, because they figured out that it doesn't matter at this point. As long as you're there, and as long as that platform is continuing to get more subscribers, then they're going to make money because they're invested in it. That does you no good. I mean, I understand if some of you guys are, invested in some of the public companies and whatnot, and you're making your money based off of also how many people are subscribed to these platforms. But the reality is, a lot of us aren't. And a lot of us have no intention of being investors in that regard. And I think that's fine too. But if you're not going to be invested in it, then you need to invest in yourself, and you need to invest in your own infrastructure, and you need to invest in having a place where you can take people to give them an experience. Because at the end of the day, if you're not an investor, if you're not a shareholder in the platform you're putting the music on, then yeah, you don't have any ownership, right? You don't have any ownership. You're just, another end user that they have an obligation to pay a very small percentage at the end of the month. That's all it is. And if that's the relationship you want with your music, then I would say, yeah, it's a wrap. If your whole thing is like, I'm gonna spend all this money, I'm gonna buy $2,000 drum machines and $2,000 audio interface and microphones and preamps, and I'm gonna spend all this money on VSTs and computers and all this stuff, just to then just throw it to a DSP and say, okay, you guys do what you're gonna do with it. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. And I think we're not setting up the next generation to have any real motivation to do music at all if we continue down that path, if that's the continued trajectory that we have for how we deal with music. We're setting an example that music doesn't have value. It doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't matter. It's not worth anything. And you're going to find more people are going to leave and go do something else, because there's a lot of opportunities on the internet, and way more than just doing music. People are going to find other things to do. You'd be surprised. A lot of artists, a lot of singers, a lot of rappers, whatever, they get into music they initially got into music because they saw a opportunity to make money. Some of them are passionate about it. Some of them had lifelong dreams to be an entertainer or, do music for a living. But a lot more people have a relationship where it is solely about making money. And when they see that there is no money, because we haven't created a culture that actually has a real economy and a real relationship with the end user or the listener, we've created a situation where your average artist, rapper, singer, whatever, the average recording artist is gonna look at the whole economy and say, "Yeah, right. I'm not doing that. There's plenty of other things to do." People will start an OnlyFans. They'll start something else. Trust me, they won't be doing music. So we need to be careful with how we're positioning ourselves and also how we're approaching this whole like music thing and like the strategy that we're using, because I think right now it's too much peer pressure going on, not enough strategy, not enough individual thinking in the end. And I'm not saying that the only way that we can do this is being individual. I think we do have to have some communities and like have some collectives and create thought and have some think tanks and get together and strategize behind closed doors and then figure out how we're going to move. That's going to be part of what's necessary. But I think if we don't do the work, if we just start looking at each other's social and say, "Oh, such and such posted that, dang, they had a lot of views. They had a lot of listens this year. They had a whole bunch of streams. Like, oh, they had a whole bunch of fans. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna post mine too. Like this will motivate me, and it'll show people that I'm serious." I don't think that posting a wrap up shows your audience, your fans, or anything else that you're serious. I think what shows them you're serious is actually taking control of your product in the end and showing them that there's value and creating additional value and figuring out how to make it where there's an experience attached to whatever you're doing. I think that's the real key. I think this whole just do whatever the crowd is doing will drive us in a direction where we just get left holding the bag in the end, because there's going to be people that basically dip out of music long before you realize what's going on, and yeah, you're still putting up your stuff on streaming, and they've moved on to all kind of other ventures. You don't want to get left holding the bag. So I think in order to really show that you're serious, you need to take control over your situation, take control over your product, and stop just doing what the masses are doing here. Otherwise, it's a wrap.